Support a kinder, more mindful community. Help us continue to provide essential programs by donating today. Every act of kindness counts. Visit awakenpittsburgh.org to give. Hello, friends. My name is Stephanie Romero, and I am the founder and executive director of Awaken Pittsburgh. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The Ripple Effect. Awaken Pittsburgh is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering well-being, empathy, and compassion for all by teaching and encouraging mindfulness and meditation practices. I also want to take a moment to let you know that Awaken Pittsburgh offers many other opportunities for practice and connection. For example, you can join our online community, which features a space to more deeply explore the topics we cover with our guests. We have weekly posts to spark thought, practice, and reflection. I hope you will come join us to explore, connect with others, and deepen your practice. You can find out more at awakenpittsburgh.org. Welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. Today, I am excited to be talking to Matt Price. Matt is the founder of DrumNexus, a company specializing in drum circle facilitation that uses drumming and rhythm to bring people together. A lifelong drummer, Matt graduated from Berklee College of Music in 2009 and has been teaching drum lessons to individuals of all ages ever since. In 2017, he discovered the art of drum circle facilitation through Jim Donovan, sparking a passion that has led him to lead numerous drum circles for diverse groups and settings. Matt has also trained with Arthur Hall of Village Music Circles and is an active member of the Drum Circle Facilitators Guild. Matt has also worked alongside Awaken Pittsburgh to facilitate drum circles for places and people that we serve. Matt, thank you so much for joining us on the Ripple Effect podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and I know we've gotten to work together just a tiny bit, or you've worked alongside Awaken in some context, but I am really interested in getting to learn a little bit more about your personal journey with awareness practices and mindfulness in general.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a drummer, primarily drum set. I started playing the drums when I was a kid, and I went to college for music and drumming. And when I was in college, I met this kid who was really into Buddhism and meditation. And he recommended a book that you've probably heard of. It's called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And I read that, and that was what kind of started my interest in meditation and mindfulness and awareness. And that kind of coincided with meeting a teacher at Berklee College of Music, where I went to school. His name is Dave DeCenzo, and he was or is a drum set instructor, and he kind of had elements of not really Buddhism, but he had a mindfulness awareness aspect to his teaching. And so all that stuff kind of came together when I was in college. I started doing some yoga and just becoming more aware of my body and my physical state while drumming. Drumming is a very physical instrument, and when I was in college, I was doing a lot of practicing. And so you can start to create like really bad physical habits if you're practicing a lot and you're not aware of your, your breathing and your posture and just kind of like your mental state. Um, so as I was drumming and learning a lot of drumming stuff, I was also starting to try to incorporate more of the meditation aspects into that as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you got turned on to these kinds of practices in college because I feel like that's a tender enough age where it can really influence us as we grow into adulthood, fully into adulthood. So
Mhm.
that's wonderful. I'm curious now, because obviously you've been out of college for a little bit. Now, what does your practice look like? Do you have something you would call either an awareness or a mindfulness practice that you try to incorporate into your life?
Yeah, I try to do a daily seated meditation in the morning. Generally it's about 10 or 15 minutes at the start of the day. Um, it doesn't happen every single day, but I try to make that a point to do that. And that's just, the kind of very simple seated meditation, focusing on breathing and posture. Um, so that's kind of the thing that's at the core. Um, and what I find is that the days when I do that, it carries through the day. Like I'm a lot more aware of my breathing throughout the day if I start with meditation and even if it's just 10 minutes. Um, and trying to just keep coming back to that throughout the day, whether it's sitting in traffic at a red light or in line at the grocery store. um Rather than reaching for my phone and doing that whole thing, I try to be more just present and like, all right, just take some deep breaths, focus on my feet on the ground, like how's my posture, um what can I become aware of in this moment right now? Because it's so easy to like distract ourselves, I think, when we're in those moments of, just sort of standing around waiting or whatever. Um, so meditation, and then I try a couple days a week to do some kind of simple yoga practice. My job and my work is very physical, so I'm doing a lot of like moving and lifting drums in and out of the car and um facilitating drum circles. This is very physical, so like on the days off, I try to just do some yoga. Like today, I didn't have any gigs or anything, so I woke up today, did some meditation, did like a 30-minute yoga sesh. Um, yeah, so that's I think kind of at the foundation of the practice now.
Yeah, that's all amazing. I love that you have tried to build in touch points in your day that are little mini practices, like you said at the grocery store, at the red light, because I really feel like that's where we get some bang for our mindfulness buck, so to speak, because you're really like bringing it into your consciousness on a regular basis so that instead of just having a practice, you can have a more mindful life. So I really love the way you framed that.
Yeah, yeah, because to me, it's like the point of the practice is to make it a habit so you implement it in your life. Um, you know, for example, like relating it to drumming and music, if before I play, if I just take a moment and actually kind of center in on my breathing, and even if that's just 60 seconds of, a nice, deep, slow breath in, and then a really controlled, like relaxed out, that even just that is enough of a moment to kind of center myself into the practice of or the playing of drumming, right? Like um rather than like jumping right into it with a head full of the to-do list of the day or something. It can be a good way to, kind of just start whatever I'm about to do with a sense of presence.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious, I know you're a musician, but you're also an educator.
Hmm.
And you mentioned drum circles, and I know you've worked with us leading drum circles with educators and kids. So I'm just curious how you think your meditation and mindfulness practice has influenced the way you hold space for drum circle as an educator.
Mm. Yes. So when when facilitating a drum circle, there are a lot of things to try and be aware of. um, Often it's too much to be aware of, kind of. So like the more present a facilitator can be, the better they're going to be able to facilitate. So, um, my latest teacher in the drum circle world, his name is Arthur Hall. Um, in his training, he calls it your radar. So, how aware can I be as a facilitator of uh, the sounds that everybody's creating? How aware can I be of the energy level? How aware can I be of distractions? Like, especially, when you're working with kids, there's a lot of, uh, every moment creates a new distraction. So, um, the more I can be present and aware of all these little details, the sound, the feel, the vibe, and that's kind of a hard thing to like quantify, I suppose. Um, but it's a practice in itself, facilitating like um the more you do it, the better you're gonna get at those things. But like to me, it's expanding awareness from a single point, like myself, and expanding that out into a circle or a group or even a private lesson, like a one-on-one situation. Um, you have to be sensitive to like, are you pushing the person or the group too hard? Is what's being presented too challenging? Is what's being presented too boring? And you're starting to lose people, so there's like this constant level of um evaluation of what's going on.
Yeah, I feel like good facilitators of almost anything, right? To be really in tune with your audience, to really, especially kids, to really notice and and really support engagement, like you said, at the right level. It's actually an art. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing is so again from Arthur's methodology, he says follow the people who are following you.
Mm.
So to be a really good facilitator, everybody kind of thinks that they're watching you for the cues and like, oh, the facilitator is going to tell us what to do next. But if as a really good facilitator, you're actually taking cues from the group constantly to evaluate what does this group need right now? Um, do they need me to just step back and let them jam and groove and kind of figure it out? Or is it sort of, kind of starting to waver and they need something new? Do they need something more energetic, more relaxing? And like, so you're constantly trying to find those cues in people, whether it's how they're playing or their facial expressions or their posture. Like, is everybody kind of slouched over like this is boring, or is everyone smiling and upbeat and energetic? And you're constantly following the group to try and figure out like what is the way to take this music event, you know?
I love that. And I guess I'm really curious around and this is not one of the questions I sent you. It just occurred to me right now. But I'm
Good, let's
really
go.
curious about, there's a lot of research coming out about the rhythmic nature of things like dance and drumming and healing from trauma,
Hmm.
right? And so I think for me, drum circles sometimes can feel like a very sacred space. So when you add in a meditative or a mindfulness component to the drum circle experience, I'm just curious if you've had any experiences like that where you feel maybe in the energy or by feedback people are giving you that you're actually creating a space for healing and practice in these drum circles.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it starts with a level of comfort from a participant. So the better you can create a container or a framework where people feel as though they can relax into themselves. Because a lot of times, like, you'll get people in a drum circle who've never done it before or never participated in a music event. So right from the beginning, there's a level of nervousness. Um, there's a level of like self-critique, like, oh, I'm not going to be good at this. Everybody's going to judge me. I'm going to mess it up. So as the facilitator and as the leader, the more you can create a space where people feel safe and they feel like, okay, I've never drummed before, but what I'm doing right now is good enough. That's where the magic happens because the the vibe is like you're creating music with a group of people. So the more the people connect to each other, the more you're going to get that synergy, and that rhythmic entrainment, which essentially is creating like a trance like state, or kind of like a like a hypnosis, so to say. And that's where the magic can happen, because the rhythm can open up certain frequencies in the brain. And we could dive deeper into that if you want, but it can create that that place where you get into sort of a hypnotic state where you can release trauma, you can release negative thoughts, you can release physical discomfort, physical ailments. Um, and I've seen it happen. I work with a lot of senior facilities, so I work with a lot of older adults, and I see people who have dementia, who have Alzheimer's, who have memory issues, and um, you see them kind of awaken from this state when the music is happening. And it's not that I am some kind of magician or something. Like, I don't think it's me. It's really the music and the vibration. I'm just, creating that space for it to happen.
Yeah, there's so much in there that I love. I love you said creating the container for people to relax into themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um that's a concept that I really got from Jim Donovan and his drum circle philosophy. Uh you want to you want to try your best to create a space where people feel like they can be vulnerable. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like, sharing their deep secrets or anything, but just like, you know, we all have a childlike nature in us, but it's often kind of blocked behind some masks that, we build over time, like, society telling us to be a certain way, and you go to your job and you get, you got to kind of put on the face. But if you create a situation where people feel like they can just, be goofy, make a funny face, make silly sounds, um, that's where the layers start to kind of shed off and people become more authentic.
Yeah, I think just as you were talking and you mentioned that working with seniors, but we also know that you work with younger folks, kids, and I'm wondering how the experience of being fully present and open to being vulnerable is different with the littler ones. Because kids sometimes, not always, but often, show up more willing to engage musically, right? Don't have that 20 years of hearing either by themselves or from someone else that they're not good at it. So they're more, more able to just actually show up and try. So I don't know if you have any reflections on how it is to guide a experience for kids versus for adults.
Yeah. Well, yes, very. So the youngest kids that I generally work with are like kindergarten. I've done a few things for like pre-K age. Um, but the really little kids are still in that creative, imaginative space where like their cognition hasn't totally taken over. So with little kids, like being playful is, it's kind of natural. Like, okay, play the drum like you're an elephant, and it's like boo boo. They can do that pretty easily. Um, what I kind of see is that around sixth grade is when they start to become a little more aware socially, which starts to put up those filters a little bit, like, oh, well, I can't act silly because everybody else is watching me. Um, so, middle school age, it starts to get that way, and then high school, it's a little more. Um, and but I should also say that it's like, it depends on the kids and the group and the vibe. Um, but yeah, with little kids, like, I don't know, it's pretty easy to just stay in that very creative, fun place. Um, what was the question again?
I mean, you can talk about whatever you want, Matt.
I kind of lost track there.
I guess I was really trying to get at, well, in my mind, what I was connecting is sometimes awareness, right, in an adult is like a negative, hyper self-critical awareness. But with
Yeah,
kids, it's just raw and open. And so, you were kind of describing how you work with some adults who maybe don't, because of that filter, don't allow themselves to be in a vulnerable space. But I know the younger kids, and I love that you named sixth grade because I taught middle school for 16 years. And there's such a shift. And the middle school I was in was fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And somewhere between sixth and seventh grade,
yeah,
definitely by seventh grade, there's a big shift in kids, right? There's a big shift in kids. And
yeah.
name it
I'll tell
name
you.
it puberty or whatever is going on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's funny because I also used to teach in a middle school. It was fifth through eighth grade, for 9 years. And there was one, I have this very specific memory of there was so I taught a music class. It was like what a lot of people nowadays call modern band. We called it rock band. So it was like, guitars and drums and playing more like rock style music. But there was a girl who did the band in starting in fifth grade, fifth, sixth grade, and then when the school year started, when she was in seventh grade, we were in class and I said something like, okay, like the later in the day, like you're gonna have recess and you guys are gonna go outside and play. And she just like real strong looked at me and she's like, Matt, we're in seventh grade now. We don't play anymore. We chill. And I just like that that memory has stuck with me all these years later because I saw her go from like a little kid to this, seventh grade kind of like preteen, and that exactly what you're saying, like that shift in her mindset about who she is now. Like she's basically telling herself, "Oh, I'm not a kid anymore. Like I don't play anymore. I'm like now I'm cool and we just kind of hang out." Um, so yeah, and it's that's my memory, but like there were so many kids where that shift happens from like fifth, sixth grade into, you know, yeah, the puberty ages.
Yeah, that's a great story. I really, really love that story. And that's the self-awareness that's shifting in kids, and then, them becoming social creatures, and that social network becoming more important, and all of those things, which, as and you kind of mentioned this earlier, like working with students, whether it's through a group or one-on-one, part of what I'm sure you're teaching is different self-awareness practices, right? Because, I'm not a musician, but years and years and years ago when I was younger, I did take some instrument lessons. Um, Never continued on into my adulthood, unfortunately, but I remember there's a lot about, in the one memory that I have, about piano, like just your hand posture, right? How you're holding your body in relationship to the instrument, and like being able to reach all the keys and things like that, and coordinating the pedals, and there's a lot of physical self-awareness, but there's also the need for emotional regulation at the same time. So I'm curious about how you work with that with your students of any age.
Yeah, there are so many levels to it because the first level is like let's say for example a private student playing drum set. Like the first thing is just being aware of the fact that you can make sounds come out of the instrument, right? Like, yeah, you can hit it and you can hit it soft, you can hit it hard, you can hit it fast, you can hit it slow. Uh, oh my goodness, if you hit the cymbal in different places, it makes different sounds. Like, and that in itself is like a lifelong journey of playing the instrument by yourself. And then the next level up is like you can actually play with other people. And now you have to be aware of like if it's just two people playing together, let's say a drummer and a piano player. Okay, well, now we have to kind of make sure that our speed and our volume are kind of matching because I can't overpower you and I can't play faster than you because I mean I can, but now we're not really playing together. We're just playing at the same time. So there are so many levels to that. And that's why it's playing an instrument is really like a lifelong journey because your level of awareness of what you're doing and how it relates to the other players and the other musicians, um, it never really ends. Like you reach a depth and then you're kind of there, and then a new layer opens up, like, oh wow, oh, so it's a never-ending journey. Shifting from like a private lesson thing to the drum circles, um, the main concept is like getting everybody on beat together, sharing a single rhythm, because especially with younger kids, a lot of times like you give them an instrument and they're very focused in on that, like, oh, when I hit this drum it makes sounds, or when I shake this tambourine it makes a certain sound, and they become very engaged with that. But then the next level up is, okay, well, maybe you can pay attention to the fact that there's people sitting right next to you who are also experiencing an instrument. But maybe, perhaps, you can start to experience it together, and you can create music that's bigger than just yourself. Um, and like you can expand that out, 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, 100 people, and um that like expanding awareness is it's important with the younger kids, especially because like it's really easy for them to just hone in on themselves. um yeah, so I'll stop it there.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. It feels like a metaphor for our lives, right?
Yeah,
Like, on some level, even those of us of a certain age as adults, we're still working on ourselves. We're still trying to figure out certain things about us. And the bigger, I want to say challenge, but that's not really what I mean, but like almost calling is how to work on ourselves and be fully ourselves in harmony, creating something beautiful with those around us.
yeah, yeah, the drum circle works great for that as a metaphor, because you can be in a drum circle and be completely unaware of what's going on and just create music for yourself. Um, just like in life, like you can go through life and just be focused on yourself. Um, you know, you can weave, I don't know, like barging through traffic or cutting people in line, cutting people, you can do that. But as soon as you become aware of the fact that what you do has an impact on the people around you, and you can recognize it, then you start realizing, oh, I'm part of a collective, I'm part of something bigger. And in the drum circle, if I actually, like, let's say for example I'm playing a cowbell, um I can just sit there and go bam, 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 and just be nailing that thing, without really focusing on the others. But um, let's say I'm playing the cowbell and the person next to me has a drum. If I just take a moment and realize that they're going boom, 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 and they're leaving an opening in their music, maybe I can realize that I can actually fill in a little space between what they're doing. Boom, boom, that, that, boom, boom, gak, 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 gak. And now I'm in dialogue and I'm having a relationship with somebody, and so it's not about me anymore, it's about us.
Yeah, it's almost what you started saying there is almost like empathy and compassion. Like, I can either just focus on me, or I can realize that no, there's some kind of other thing happening out there that I can feel into, right?
Yeah.
And then I love your cowbell. What's that saying? Oh, never too much cowbell, something
more
like
more more cowbell, more
more
cowbell.
cowbell. So your example is like there can't be too much cowbell.
Sometimes there can be, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Well, that's the thing, like tasteful, right? Like, yeah, play the cowbell, but recognize that it's part of a bigger a bigger ensemble.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome. And I love that. So there's like this idea in my mind. So I used to teach Spanish, and one of the units that I loved to do was about Spanish music, Latin music, and it's, polyrhythmic in a way that's not common in like North American music, right? And the kids, we would have a lot of fun like just trying to hear the different rhythms in a very complicated song. And I'm not a musician, but it's so much fun to think about how each instrument, and in Latin music you have congo, you have something like cowbell, you have the güiro, you have, you know what I mean, like so many percussion instruments potentially in a bigger band, that you could pick out and hear how they complement each other. It's almost like a mini drum circle happening during the salsa concert or something like that. But thinking about and I'm sure you've seen live music like that. I love to go to live Latin music, but they really, like, the musicians actually are making eye contact and nodding to each other, and like they're really interacting and vibing with each other as they're playing when you go to live Latin music. And I'm talking specifically about percussionists, right? Because there's usually at
Yeah.
least four or five of them up on the stage. Um, yeah, and that just what you were describing in that little boom, boom, ding, 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 or whatever noises you made.
Yeah.
Like that on a large scale, it's like an orchestra. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a rhythmic dialogue. Um, and yeah, so the drum circle is taking the elements of like culturally specific drumming from around the world, where the way that I facilitate drum circles, like I don't teach any specific cultural rhythms per se. Like I don't do like African rhythms or Brazilian rhythms or Afro-Cuban or anything. Um, but you take the kind of universal themes that exist in all of these rhythmic styles of music, where it's like there's a pulse, there's always a pulse, and often a lower sounding drum will kind of keep that, like a heartbeat, you could imagine. um and then you kind of layer it up from there, right? So uh maybe the higher pitched drums are kind of keeping more of a continuous rhythm, and then you might have a shaker sound that's kind of filling it all in, like a little uh just like a little spice on the top. And then you might have a bell or a clave or something that's kind of in a lot of Latin music, the clave sticks keep that clave rhythm, right? Got 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 got, or variations of that. um and they all weave together to create a nice layered groove. And so in the drum circle, you try to teach people how to kind of create their own layers without necessarily like giving them a specific rhythm to play. Again, to quote Arthur Hall, teaching without teaching. So what you really want to do is just get people to become aware of the different sounds: low drums, high drums, middle drums, um, cowbells, shakers, wood blocks. And somebody might be playing a drum in a drum circle, and it's not until you say, okay, everybody's going to stop except for the shakers. And then all of a sudden, all of the bottom end cuts out, all the drums, and all you hear is and somebody who's been playing a hand drum or a djembe or something, they might not have even known that there were shakers until that moment, because they were so focused in on their own thing. Um, and so what I'll do a lot of times, like you mentioned eye contact, which is so crucial, because again, going kind of all the way back to what we started with, like when people are nervous, they kind of close off, right? And they might not look at the others who are creating the music with them. So often what I'll do in those kind of moments where I say, okay, everybody stop except the shakers. Then it's like, okay, now take a moment and actually try to find somebody who's playing a shaker. Like, can you see them? Can you see where the sound is coming from? Can you see the human who's creating the music? And now we're starting to develop more of a sense of community and a sense of like, oh, that sound is coming from an individual person who maybe I've never even met before, like they're all the way over there on the other side of the circle, but now I can begin to recognize that we're creating music together.
Yeah, I love the idea of community building through Drum Circle. I mean, in other ways, of course, as well. But recently I was meeting a friend for coffee, and she was saying, in a kind of exaggerated way, like the real problem right now in our society is that
Right.
we don't get together in community groups anymore because we've lost church. And she wasn't saying that people should be Christian or Jewish or anything. Like, she was actually just saying, like, we don't have opportunities to gather in larger social groups because so many folks have, become, I don't know, agnostic, whatever word you want to use there, that they're not actually participating in large social groups anymore. And the way that you're talking about the drum circle, I'm just thinking that actually is fulfilling the need for community that we're, at least my friend was naming, that we're missing, that we're actually really missing. And even the Surgeon General, I don't know, a few months back actually put out, I don't know if you saw this like announcement that there's a loneliness epidemic, right? And
Yeah.
and I really, post COVID, like that's a thing. It's actually a thing. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious if you have any thoughts on how maybe music and the work that you do kind of bridges that lack for folks.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like it's such a big topic because we've become more digitally connected than ever, but it's causing people to become more isolated. And, I know we all really felt that a lot during COVID, and people were longing for real connection and real interaction with people. And yeah, I think that if you go back to most points in history in any part of the world, you'll find that the most important thing was community and gathering, um whether that's based on religious gatherings or um like ceremonies or ritual or whatever. um the thing that we really need is to to feel and be part of community. Um and the drum circle is a way to start that, because like you are in community, you are communicating, right? Like there's commonality, like all these kind of words that sort of mean the same thing. um you're creating music together, and that's like the way to start, excuse me, the way to start connections, to build community. um so to me, it's like the drum circle is a way to gather and a way to create that, but it's kind of just like the starting point. Um, but it works well because everybody can communicate at one time. Like you're all playing together, and you're creating this shared musical experience that can't happen without the people that are there. Um, and when you're in a drum circle and everybody's just kind of vibing and creating music, it's really powerful because the music is not predetermined, it's not written down, it's not rehearsed. it's whatever's happening because of the people that are there in that moment. And in every moment it's changing, it's organic. If somebody gets up and leaves to go to the bathroom or take a break or whatever, the music changes. If somebody new shows up and, you know, picks up the cowbell and starts hitting it, it's now new music because there's a new person there creating in the moment. Um, so yeah, it's very special, and uh it's cool because anybody can do it and anybody can be a part of it.
Yeah, the when you were talking, I was thinking like you were kind of naming the community spaces, and a lot of them involve music in some way, shape, or form. Like even church, like I grew up Catholic, there's a lot of singing, right? There's a lot of singing. And so the community gathering, and traditionally in many cultures, involved singing and dancing and music making. Music was somehow a part of it. And to kind of circle back to something we hit on before, like there's now really good data showing that any kind of community singing, community music making, dancing, rhythms, and even drumming in particular, because it's both sides of the body, are
Mhm.
actually like stimulating the vagus nerve and starting to do trauma healing, like and engaging in trauma healing. And so it's so fascinating to me to think like music's fun, right? But why do we love it so much? And is part of that the healing nature of it, that it's actually making us feel better?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it is universal to every, like, no matter what your heritage or your background or where you're from in the world, your family and your ancestors participated in music, like without a doubt. And um it's interesting that I think particularly in the West, like we've lost that a bit, where people think that only musicians are allowed to play music and only singers are allowed to sing, and kind of this thing of, um oh well, when I was a kid, like I didn't sing, and I never did choir, so like now that I'm an adult, I can't sing, like that's not for me. But the truth is that if you have a voice, you can sing, right? Even if it's not like, technically on key, who cares? Whatever. Um, and that's like that's a big thing that Jim Donovan talks about a lot, and that's like kind of a big part of his philosophy. Um, and yeah, it is important because there's something about that when people come together and sing particularly, or even just, if you ever get together with a group of people and you all make the same sound at the same time, like it's really intense. um it's like there's just something about it. And I know that science is kind of like now catching up with the traditions, right? Like, we're doing neuroscience studies, and a lot of the stuff with the vagus nerve science and all that. It's like, oh, like no wonder everybody did this throughout history, because there's really something to it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And when you were talking there at the end, like everyone making the same sound together, it reminded me of chanting, because that's like another tradition that's found across cultures, in Buddhism and Catholicism and other cultures, like chanting. I could keep talking for hours with you, but we should probably start to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, for
is
sure.
there anything that I didn't ask about that you were hoping to share about either the connection between awareness or meditation or mindfulness, the work you do, anything at all that was in your mind that you wanted to share that you didn't?
Well, I one thing that occurs frequently, like, so I teach private drum set lessons, but I'll often encounter parents of kids who will say, "Oh, I want to play guitar," and I'm like, "Okay, well, do it. Like, just try. Like, try." Um, so I would encourage anybody who's interested in trying an instrument to like really just try it out. And I know that it's intimidating, like to go to the guitar store and pick up a guitar and like, you got all these really good players around you, but like if it's something that is in your mind, I would just give it a good go, And like when I say try, I mean like maybe give it a month or two. Like try it out. Like play some guitar, play piano, or take some voice lessons, or come do some drumming. Um, because I think that if you're kind of like saying that to yourself in your brain, then it's, part of your consciousness is saying like, I want to experience this kind of musical outlet. And the the ego kind of stops us from like trying these new things because we're afraid we're not going to be good at it and everybody's going to judge us and all these things. But if you can kind of like drop that and just recognize like, all right, well, if I'm going to start playing like learning an instrument, if I've never done it before, then how can you possibly be good, quote, at the beginning? Like, just try it out. Um, and so I think that's kind of always my advice for people is like, if you've got a hankering to try some music, go for it.
I love that. And I just want to say, you can find a YouTube video to teach you how to do anything. So you don't even have to go to a place and play in front of anyone. You could be alone
Right.
at home. You could go on Facebook Marketplace, find that used instrument,
Yeah.
and you could just be at home until you feel you have a level of comfort to be out in the world showing your skills or not, right?
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Yeah, like I have spent way too much of my time on Facebook Marketplace and YouTube looking for things, but it's, one of the great advantages we have now is we have access to so much and it's free.
Yeah.
A lot of it is free. So I love that advice. And then the last question I have for you, which you did mention, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is one of my favorite books by Shenmue Suzuki Roshi, in case folks are looking for it. Do you have any other favorite resource that you want to share with folks that you would recommend that they read or listen to or anything like that?
Hmm. Yeah, so I really liked that one. There's another book. I don't know if you consider it mindfulness per se, but The Four Agreements.
Oh, I love that one too. Such a good
Yeah,
one.
that's a really, really good book that I find myself kind of going back to periodically because the agreements are very simple, but not
Yes.
not necessarily easy in the
Yes.
sense of um he even says like in the beginning of the book, it's like if you can figure out how to do this, like your life will be amazing.
Yeah.
Um because they're such simple concepts, but it's like putting it into practice and living it is um like in every day and in every moment choice, right?
Yeah. I
Uh,
actually bought that for Christmas for my foster daughter. That was one of her Christmas presents.
nice.
That
Yeah, that's a
that
great
book.
book.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Matt, it has been such a pleasure. I appreciate your time of joining me in this conversation and sharing your experience and wisdom with the folks that are listening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks for getting in contact to do this. It was awesome.
Say Something Studios.